The clatter of cutlery and the low hum of conversation were the daily soundtrack to Lena Petrova's life. At 26, she navigated the worn linoleum floor of the Cornerstone Cafe with a practiced grace, a coffee pot perpetually in hand. Each day was a careful balancing act of rent, bills, and the ever-present ache of deferred dreams. Lena had an artist's soul, her true passion lying in photojournalism, a craft her late mother, Clara, had lovingly introduced her to. But life, as it often does, had demanded practicality over passion. Her mother's old camera lay dormant in a drawer, a silent testament to ambitions set aside. Lena possessed a quiet diligence and an almost uncanny ability to observe the small details others missed, the way a customer's smile didn't quite reach their eyes, the subtle hesitation before an order, the almost invisible tremor in an elderly man's hand as he reached for his cup. These observations were her silent stories, captured not on film, but in the archive of her mind. She endured the occasional condescending remark or impatient gesture with a polite, if sometimes strained smile, her innate integrity a shield against the small erosions of spirit her job sometimes threatened. Mr. Alistair Cromwell was an enigma. He appeared at the Cornerstone Cafe perhaps once a month, always choosing a small booth by the window, his presence an island of quiet intensity in the bustling diner. He was older, perhaps in his late 50s, with eyes that seemed to hold a distant sorrow, and a way of nursing a single cup of black coffee for an hour as he read a well-worn book. Lena treated him with the same unobtrusive courtesy. She offered everyone, though she often found her gaze lingering on the profound sadness she sometimes glimpsed when he thought no one was watching. One blustery Tuesday evening, just as the dinner rush was beginning to wane, Mr. Cromwell departed in a hurry, a sudden phone call pulling him away. It wasn't until Lena was clearing his table that she saw it, a rich, dark leather wallet lying innocuously on the vinyl seat. Her heart gave a small jolt. Such items were magnets for trouble. Finders keepers, chuckled Marco, the cook from the kitchen pass, through, wiping grease from his hands. Lena shook her head. It's Mr. Cromwell's. He'll be back for it, I'm sure. Later, as she was cashing out, the diner now quiet, she held the wallet. The responsible thing would be to try and find a contact number or address. With a sense of performing a necessary duty, she unsnapped the clasp. A driver's license confirmed the owner, Alistair Cromwell, with an address in the city's most exclusive district. But it wasn't the address that seized her attention. Tucked neatly behind a credit card, almost hidden in a leather fold, was a small, faded photograph. Her breath caught in her throat. The world seemed to tilt. It was a picture of a young woman, her smile hesitant but radiant, her eyes a familiar shade of hopeful blue. Her dark hair was styled in a way Lena had only seen in her mother's oldest, most cherished pictures. There was no mistaking her. It was Clara Moreau, her mother, but younger, more vibrant than Lena had ever known her, captured in a moment before life had etched its hardships onto her beautiful face. Lena sank onto a nearby stool, the wallet clutched in her trembling hand. The sounds of the diner, the hum of the ancient refrigerator, the distant traffic faded into a roaring silence in her ears. Why would this wealthy, reclusive man, a virtual stranger, carry a photograph of her mother, a woman who had lived and died in quiet obscurity, a world away from the life Mr. Cromwell evidently knew? The question was a physical blow, leaving her breathless and shaken to her core. The photograph, a tiny, fragile square, had just torn a hole in the fabric of her reality. Sleep offered Lena no respite. The image of her mother's youthful face, tucked away in a stranger's wallet, played on a loop in her mind, each iteration bringing a fresh wave of bewildering questions. What connection could there possibly be? Her mother, Clara, had been a woman of simple means, a talented artist who'd sacrificed her own ambitions to raise Lena. After Lena's father, a man Clara rarely spoke of, had vanished from their lives, she had spoken of her youth in a small provincial town, of dreams of Paris, but never of connections to wealth or men like Alistair Cromwell. The next morning, the wallet felt like a lead weight in her bag. The diner owner, a kindly but pragmatic Mrs. Henderson, noticed Lena's distraction. "Everything all right, dear? You look like you've seen a ghost." Lena hesitated, then confessed her discovery. Mrs. Henderson's advice was straightforward. "Hand it to the police, Lena. Less complicated that way. Rich folks like that, they don't like their private things being poked at." But Lena couldn't. This wasn't just a lost wallet anymore. It was a tangible link to a mystery that had her mother at its heart. She felt a compelling, almost desperate need to return it herself, to see Mr. Cromwell's reaction, to ask the question that burned on her tongue. It was mid-afternoon when Alistair Cromwell returned to the Cornerstone Cafe. He looked harried, lines of stress more pronounced around his eyes than the day before. He scanned the diner, his gaze anxious. Lena's heart hammered against her ribs. Taking a deep breath, she approached his usual booth, the wallet in her hand. "Mr. Cromwell, you left this yesterday," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. Relief washed over his features, so profound it momentarily softened his stern countenance. "Oh, thank heavens. Thank you, young lady. I can't tell you how grateful I am." He reached for it, his hand brushing hers. Now was the moment. It was now or never. "Mr. Cromwell," Lena began, her voice dropping, trembling slightly despite her efforts to control it. There was a photograph inside. A picture of a woman. She paused, gathering her courage. She is my mother, Clara Petrova. Or Clara Moreau, as she was then. I don't understand how you would have her picture." Alistair Cromwell froze, his hand halfway to pocketing the wallet. His eyes, which had softened with relief, now sharpened, a curtain dropping behind them, masking whatever emotion her words had stirred. He seemed to draw into himself, his posture stiffening. Beside him, a woman Lena hadn't initially noticed, who had entered with him and stood slightly in his shadow, stepped forward. She was older, impeccably dressed, with a severe hairstyle and an air of formidable authority. This was Miss Harriet Dunwood, Mr. Cromwell's long-time associate, and, as Lena would learn, the fiercely protective guardian of his privacy and the family's history. "Mr. Cromwell is very busy," Miss Dunwood said, her voice polite but undeniably dismissive, a finely crafted barrier. "He's grateful for the return of his property. I'm sure it was just an old acquaintance." She opened a small purse. "For your trouble." "No, please," Lena said, recoiling slightly from the offered money. "I don't want a reward. I need to understand." Her gaze was fixed on Cromwell, pleading. Alistair Cromwell remained silent for a long moment, his eyes searching Lena's face. He saw the genuine distress, the insistent need for an answer. Perhaps it was the unwavering honesty in her eyes, or the subtle, unmistakable echo of Clara Moreau in her features, a certain tilt of the head, a shadow in the depths of her gaze. He finally spoke, his voice low and gravelly. "Ms. Dunwood, please." He raised a hand, a gesture that silenced his companion. He looked back at Lena. The woman in the photograph. Her name was Clara Moreau. I knew her a very long time ago. He paused, a flicker of something unreadable, pain, perhaps, or a deep, old sorrow crossing his face. "Perhaps we could speak, privately, later this week." Miss Dunwood's lips thinned almost imperceptibly, but she said nothing. Lena felt a dizzying surge of hope mixed with trepidation. Yes, please." What Mr. Cromwell didn't realize at that moment, the unspoken narrative seemed to whisper through the diner's lingering scent of coffee and old vinyl, was that the young waitress before him carried more of Clara than just a passing resemblance. She carried her heart, her history, and a truth he had long thought buried. An opportunity, fragile and fraught with unknown implications, had just been extended. The meeting was set for Thursday afternoon at Mr. Cromwell's city residence, an imposing stone mansion in a neighborhood Lena had only ever seen in magazines. Ms. Dunwood had called with the details, her tone clipped and formal, making it clear this was an unusual concession. Walking up the sweeping drive, Lena felt a profound sense of unreality. The worn strap of her mother's old camera bag, which she'd brought, containing her few precious photos of Clara, digging into her shoulder. She was shown into a vast, dimly lit study lined floor to ceiling with books. Alistair Cromwell stood by a large mahogany desk, looking less the reclusive diner patron and more the man of immense wealth and power he undoubtedly was. Yet, his eyes still held that familiar trace of melancholy. "Miss Petrova," he said, his voice softer than it had been in the diner. "Thank you for coming." "Mr. Cromwell," Lena replied, trying to keep her voice even. "Thank you for seeing me." He gestured to a leather armchair. "Please." He remained standing, a subtle distance maintained. "You said the woman in the photograph, Clara Moreau, was your mother?" "Yes," Lena affirmed. She carefully retrieved a small, worn album from her bag. "I don't have many pictures. My mother wasn't one for being in front of the camera. She preferred to be behind it." She opened the album, revealing a few cherished snapshots. Clara laughing with a younger Lena on a rare trip to the coast. Clara, a smudge of paint on her cheek, sketching in a park. Clara, her eyes full of love, looking directly at the camera at Lena. Alistair Cromwell looked at the photographs for a long time, his expression unreadable. He picked up one of Lena and her mother, his fingers tracing the outline of Clara's face almost reverently. When he finally spoke, his voice was thick with an emotion he quickly suppressed. "The resemblance is remarkable. She was a remarkable woman." He confirmed again that he had known Annalise Hayes, Clara Moreau, very long time ago. His responses were still brief, tinged with a sadness that only deepened the mystery. Then he made the most unexpected offer. "My own mother passed away some years ago," he explained, his gaze distant. "She left behind an extensive archive, journals, photographs, correspondence, decades of it. It's disorganized. I've been meaning to have someone go through it, to catalog it properly." He paused, then looked directly at Lena. "It's possible there might be further mention of Clara in those papers. She was associated with my family for a time." He offered Lena a temporary, well-paid position to undertake this cataloging. "You have a keen eye, I suspect," he added, a faint, almost wistful smile touching his lips. And you would have a vested interest in finding any reference to her. Lena was stunned. It was an incredible opportunity, a door swinging open into a past she was desperate to understand. I accept, Mr. Cromwell. Thank you. Later that day, as Lena was being shown the cavernous, dust-sheeted rooms that housed the Thorne family archives by a rigidly polite Miss Dunwood, the older woman made her disapproval subtly known. Mr. Cromwell is a man of deep sentiment, Miss Petrova, she said, her voice cool. He can be impulsive when memories are stirred. It is a significant undertaking. This archive, one hopes it will not prove to be a fruitless or distracting endeavor. She then added, almost as an aside, some histories are best left undisturbed, for everyone's peace of mind. Lena felt a chill despite the stuffy air of the archive rooms. Ms. Dunwood's words were a veiled warning. The archivist role was more than just a job. It was a passage into a guarded history, and it was clear that Ms. Dunwood intended to be the gatekeeper. The Thorne family archives were a labyrinth of forgotten time. Housed in a rarely used wing of the Cromwell mansion, rooms were filled with towering shelves, stacked boxes, and antique filing cabinets, all coated with a fine layer of dust that shimmered in the thin shafts of light penetrating the grimy windows. For Lena, it was both daunting and exhilarating. This was where pieces of her mother's hidden life might be found. Armed with a notepad, archival gloves, and an unshakable resolve, Lena began her work. Her natural diligence and the keen observational skills honed by years of waitressing, noticing the smallest details, the patterns, the things out of place, proved invaluable. She started with correspondence from the period Mr. Cromwell had vaguely indicated Clara might have been associated with the family roughly 30 years prior. Days turned into weeks. She found sporadic, almost fleeting mentions of C. Moreau or Miss Moreau in old household staff ledgers, payments for art restoration assistance or temporary secretarial duties. There were a few candid group photographs from large family gatherings or charity events where, if Lena looked closely, she could spot a younger Clara in the background, a fleeting smile, a turn of the head, always on the periphery. She was undeniably there, a quiet, almost invisible presence in the opulent world of the Cromwells. But detailed information, anything personal or substantial, remained frustratingly elusive. It was as if Clara had been a ghost, leaving only the faintest traces. Lena soon began to suspect that this scarcity was not entirely accidental. Ms. Harriet Dunwood, under the guise of offering assistance, seemed to be subtly steering her. Boxes Lena had meticulously organized would be inexplicably misfiled. Overnight, certain cabinets were declared too fragile, or their keys misplaced. When Lena asked direct questions about the staffing or record-keeping practices of that era, Ms. Dunwood's answers were invariably vague, polite, and ultimately unhelpful. Behind the scenes, a different plan was unfolding. Lena wrote in her private journal one evening, the words almost a whisper on the page. Ms. Dunwood isn't just protecting Mr. Cromwell's privacy. She's actively curating this history. She's building a wall around something. The older woman, fiercely loyal to the memory of Alistair, Cromwell's late mother, a formidable matriarch, by all accounts, seemed determined to control the narrative Lena might uncover. The suspicion that a deeper, more significant story was being deliberately obscured grew stronger with each passing day. Was it a forbidden romance? a terrible injustice, a tragedy that the powerful Cromwell family had swept under the rug. Lena felt she was on the precipice of a major discovery, yet every avenue seemed to lead to a carefully constructed dead end. Her conviction solidified when, deep within a dusty crate of old household inventories, she found a small, leather-bound diary. It was tucked beneath a stack of yellowed linens, clearly out of place. The embossed initials on the cover were faint, but unmistakable. CM Clara Moreau. Lena's heart leaped. But the diary was secured with a small, tarnished brass lock. When she cautiously inquired if anyone might know of a key, Miss Dunwood, after a cursory glance, had pronounced the clasp irretrievably broken, and the key lost to the ages, no doubt. Her tone brooked no further discussion. Lena knew, with a certainty that settled deep in her bones, that Miss Dunwood was lying. The diary felt warm in her hands, a direct conduit to her mother's voice, and she knew its secrets were being actively, resolutely guarded. The Dunwood cipher, as Lena had come to think of it, was proving to be a formidable obstacle. The locked diary became Lena's obsession. She knew it held the key, not just literally, but to understanding the wall of silence surrounding her mother's connection to the Cromwell family. Ms. Dunwood's dismissiveness only fueled Lena's determination. She couldn't shake the feeling that the truth of her mother's past, and perhaps her own, lay just beyond that small brass lock. After another week of fruitless searching for a misplaced key and subtle deflections from Miss Dunwood, Lena decided she could no longer proceed under the guise of a mere archivist. The pretense was too thin, the stakes too personal. She requested a meeting with Alistair Cromwell, steeling herself for what might be a difficult conversation. She found him in his study, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the room. Lena didn't waste time with pleasantries. She laid out her findings, or rather, the deliberate lack thereof. She spoke not with accusation, but with the quiet conviction of her careful observations, the misfiled boxes, the inaccessible records, the conveniently lost keys, culminating with the discovery of Clara's locked diary and Miss Dunwood's immediate claim that it was beyond opening. "Mrs. Cromwell," Lena said, her voice earnest, "I believe Miss Dunwood is actively preventing me from learning the truth about my mother. I don't know why, but this diary, I feel it's vital." She spoke of her deep, unwavering need to understand Clara's life, the life she had before Lena. Alistair Cromwell listened intently, his gaze fixed on Lena's face. He saw not an opportunist or a gold digger, but a daughter yearning for her mother's story. He saw the unwavering integrity that mirrored Clara's own. And he saw, with a clarity that now startled him, the profound resemblance not just in feature, but in spirit. His own fragmented childhood memories, long suppressed, began to surface. A kind young woman with gentle hands and a sad smile, someone who had shown him a rare, uncomplicated affection during a lonely period of his youth. He had almost forgotten her, or perhaps had been encouraged to. A surge of determination, a need for a truth he himself had never fully grasped, coursed through him. He summoned Miss Dunwood to the study. The formidable housekeeper entered, her composure immaculate, but a flicker of apprehension in her eyes as she saw Lena. Mr. Cromwell's tone was quiet but unyielding. "Harriet," he began, "Miss Petrova has found a diary belonging to Clara Moreau. She believes you know where the key is." Miss Dunwood initially denied it, her voice smooth. "Alistair, we discussed this. The key was lost years ago. The lock is likely rusted shut. But Cromwell was not to be deterred. I want the truth, Harriet. All of it. About Clara Moreau. His gaze was unwavering. Under that direct, relentless pressure from the man she had served, and in some ways protected, for most of her life, Harriet Dunwood's formidable composure finally cracked. Her shoulders sagged, and tears, shocking from such a stoic figure, welled in her eyes. The confession, when it came, was a torrent of long-held secrets and guilt. She had been a junior member of the household staff herself back then, fiercely loyal to Alistair's late mother, a woman of iron will and rigid social codes. Clara Moreau, young, talented, and gentle, had indeed worked for the family, initially hired to help restore some delicate artworks, and she had fallen deeply in love with Alistair's father, the charming but often melancholic elder Mr. Cromwell. Their relationship had been a secret, passionate, and tender. When Alistair's mother discovered the affair, her fury had been boundless. She had tasked Harriet, then young and eager to please, with engineering Clara's swift and silent dismissal. They had concocted false rumors, painting Clara as unreliable, even a thief, to ensure she would never be welcomed in their social circles again. Clara was forced out with a meager, insulting settlement, heartbroken and unjustly shamed. And Miss Dunwood confessed, her voice barely a whisper. Clara had been pregnant when she left, a fact she had kept hidden, terrified of the Cromwell matriarch's wrath. Miss Dunwood, her face pale with remorse and the fear of exposure, fumbled in her pocket and produced a tiny, tarnished brass key. I kept it, she whispered. I don't know why, perhaps as a penance. With trembling hands, Alistair took the key. He and Lena sat side by side, the silence in the grand study broken only by the rustle of delicate pages as he opened Clara Moreau's diary. Her elegant script filled the small book, a poignant chronicle of her love for Alistair's father, her joy, her hopes, and then her utter devastation at their forced separation. She wrote of her quiet dignity in the face of injustice, her decision to raise her child alone, to protect her from the cruelty she herself had endured. The final entries spoke of a bittersweet new love, her daughter, Lena. The truth that leaves her in tears was a complex tapestry of emotions for Lena. Tears for her mother's profound, secret suffering, for the love that had been stolen from her, for the strength Clara had shown in the face of such cruelty. And then, the most stunning revelation of all, one that Alistair pieced together from the diary's dates and his own family history. His father, the man Clara had loved, was also Lena's father. Alistair Cromwell looked at Lena, his own eyes wet with unshed tears, the weight of decades of secrets settling between them. She never told him, he said, his voice choked. My father, he never knew he had a daughter. He reached out, his hand hesitantly covering Lena's, which means you are my sister, my half-sister. The locked heart of the past had finally, irrevocably, been opened. The revelation hung in the air of the grand study, monumental and life-altering. Lena stared at Alistair, her mind reeling. A sister. He was her brother. Tears streamed down her face, tears of shock, sorrow for her mother's hidden pain, and a nascent, bewildering sense of connection to this man who was, until a few weeks ago, a stranger. Alistair Cromwell was equally shaken. A lifetime of carefully constructed family history had just been dismantled and reassembled in a way he could never have imagined. He felt a profound, aching remorse for his family's past cruelty, for the life his father had been denied with his other daughter, and for the hardships Clara and Lena had endured. The first consequence of the truth was for Miss Harriet Dunwood. Stripped of her manipulative power, her actions exposed, she stood pale and diminished. Alistair, his voice heavy with disappointment, gave her a stark choice: immediate retirement with a modest, unembellished severance, or public accountability for her role in the character assassination and deceitful cover-up concerning Clara Moreau. Miss Dunwood, her pride shattered, chose retirement, disappearing from the Cromwell household within days, a silent specter of the past. For Lena, the world shifted on its axis. Alistair, moved by a profound new sense of familial duty and a burgeoning, genuine affection for his newfound sister, was determined to right the past wrongs as much as humanly possible. He ensured that Lena received a significant portion of what would have been her rightful inheritance from their father's estate, a sum that lifted the yoke of financial worry from her shoulders for good. But more important than any monetary restitution was the acknowledgement. Alistair Cromwell, a man known for his reclusiveness, formally and publicly acknowledged Lena Petrova as his sister. The quiet waitress from the Cornerstone Cafe was suddenly part of one of the city's most prominent families. The transition was overwhelming, but Alistair, guided by a quiet empathy Lena hadn't expected, helped her navigate the new terrain. With her newfound security and Alistair's encouragement, Lena finally enrolled in a prestigious photojournalism program. Her mother's old camera was brought out, polished, and put to use, her artist's eye now free to capture the stories she had always longed to tell. Alistair, in a more public act of atonement and remembrance, established the Clara Moreau Foundation. Its mission was twofold: to provide scholarships and grants for aspiring female photojournalists from underprivileged backgrounds, and to offer support and resources for single mothers facing hardship. It was a direct act of systemic good, a way to honor Clara's memory by helping others who walked similar paths. Lena was invited to be on the foundation's board, her voice and perspective invaluable. She found not just financial security or a new social standing, but a deep emotional peace. Understanding her mother's complete story, her love, her pain, her resilience, brought a sense of closure that Lena hadn't known she was missing. The faded photograph, the one that had started her incredible journey, now sat framed on her desk. She often looked at it, at Clara's youthful, hopeful face. Her own tears, when they came now, were no longer just of sorrow, but of profound understanding, of connection to a mother she knew more fully, and of a bittersweet vindication for the love and life Clara Moreau had so bravely, if secretly, nurtured. The tapestry of her family, once frayed and incomplete, was being rewoven thread by thread into something new, strong, and unexpectedly beautiful. And so, Lena Petrova's journey from the quiet diligence of the Cornerstone Cafe to her place as a recognized sister and a future photojournalist serves as a powerful reminder that truth, however deeply buried, can reshape futures, and that compassion can bloom in the most unexpected family trees. If this story of resilience and the fight for deeply personal justice stirred something in you, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring narratives about people who turned adversity into triumph. What was the most impactful moment for you?